Time now for the day's business news, starting with some renewed hopes of about a truce in the U.S.-China trade war. Cole Stengler joining us in the studio to tell us more. Morning to you, Cole.
Morning, Will. We've heard this one before, obviously, but optimism is now back on both sides. U.S. President Donald Trump said he hopes to sign a, quote, partial trade pact with China next month, putting into writing the so-called mini deal signed weeks ago. Under that accord, China agreed to boost purchases of U.S. farm exports. In exchange, the U.S. agreed to delay a hike in tariffs on some $250 billion in Chinese imports. There's still no full-fledged deal, which could cover topics like intellectual property and currency exchange. Below-level talks are slated this week, and on Tuesday, Beijing sounded a note of optimism. The country's vice foreign minister said that as long as both sides respected each other, no problem could not be resolved. Now, that's music to the ears of investors today. They're looking for any hints of a respite from the 18-month-long trade war between the U.S. and China. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong up slightly, turning now to the Asian markets, where the Kospi in Seoul is showing gains of over 1.3%. Nikkei, meanwhile, closed for holiday here, but as you can see, gains across the major Asian indices. The Seoul in particular, the Kospi in Seoul, showing gains of over 1% there. Nikkei, of course, closed for holiday. European markets also off to a good start on Tuesday. That's amid hopes that British Parliament will avoid a no-deal Brexit. The CAC 40 down just under the flat line, but the FTSE up about 0.1%. Also gains on the Frankfurt DAX over there. Now let's take a look at the pound on the currency markets. Pound has seen a lot of movement in recent days. Now holding steady against the dollar here, trading up around $1.30, also seeing gains against the euro. Investors evidently cautiously optimistic over Brexit. Critical debate on the country's exit agreement from the European Union coming later today. Now, protests continued overnight in Chile, and today the country's powerful miners' union has called for a general strike. It's despite an announcement from the president that he plans to unveil a new, quote, social compact. It's the latest phase of a movement that began over a hike in subway fares and has since grown to encompass broader frustrations over inequality. Nick Rushworth has more on what's behind Chile's economic malaise.
Protesters defy an emergency decree as anger continues over the cost of living. What started with a hike in transport prices has broadened to general discontent.
What's happening is not because they have raised the metro ticket price by 30 pesos. What's happening has been going on for 30 years. We have the issue of the pensions and the queues in the clinics, hospital waiting lists, the cost of treatment, and low salaries.
Hoy estamos trabajando en un conjunto de medidas.
The Chilean president says he will respond to those concerns with a series of measures. Neoliberal economic policies over the 3 decades since the end of the Pinochet regime have resulted in low inflation and low unemployment, but also inequality. Chile is the most unequal out of all the OECD countries. The OECD's Gini index ranks it alongside Mexico and above the United States, France and Denmark in terms of income inequality. In addition to measures addressing that, the government says it's also working on a reconstruction plan to repair infrastructure damaged so far during the protests. Meanwhile, some Chileans were obliged to get into line outside supermarkets as they reopened after days of unrest.
A landmark trial focused on climate change kicks off today in the U.S. Exxon Mobil is accused by the state of New York of lying to investors, more precisely about how future profits could be affected by stronger regulations on fossil fuels. It says governments try to do more to combat climate change. Exxon, for its part, says the case is, quote, politically motivated. The trial, which is the first of its kind, is expected to last 15 days and include testimony from none other than former CEO and U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. He headed the firm from 2006 to 2017. And finally, staying in the U.S., where the Federal Trade Commission has dealt a blow to fake influencers on social media. The antitrust agency has fined a Florida businessman some $2.5 million. It's after the man's now defunct company called Devumi sold clients a wide array of services, including YouTube views and fake followers on LinkedIn and Twitter. The FTC said dishonesty in the online marketplace harms shoppers as well as firms that play fair and square. The businessman has not admitted or denied the allegations. Well, with all the power on social media today, you can't help but think, we might see some more cases like this.
Cole, do you follow any influencers?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. All right. Thank you very much, Cole, with a look at the business news. Now following